Okay, I'm gonna try to sort of explain this PCV slash air oil separator setup I've got, and in combination with this Cobb inlet, which kind of changes things up a little bit, just to sort of help clarify what I'm talking about. So over here on the driver's side, if you look in the valve cover, there's two hoses. And it's kind of hard to see, but there's front one here and the rear one. The rear hose goes up under the intercooler, but it connects to the OEM crossover pipe. It's down there under the engine block, kind of impossible to see, but it crosses over where it then also meets up with the crankcase ventilation. And then from the passenger side, again, hard to see because they're zip tied together, but there's another hose aft, the rear hose on the passenger side, which goes into that same crossover pipe. So they're all joined together and balanced, the two valve covers and the crankcase. And then they ventilate via, this is the passenger side again, this forward hose, which normally would go through into the PCV, along with on the driver's side, forward hose as well, go through the factory PCV system. But in this case, they both come around and enter the air oil separator. I have to excuse this wideband wire that's in the way. So these two top hoses here come from the passenger and driver's side valve cover, which are plumbed in with the crankcase ventilation. The bottom hose comes from what used to be the PCV port on the crankcase. It's not easy to see, but if you look under the turbo, that little fitting just in front of my turbo to intercooler coupler, that's where the factory PCV used to be. That now comes up, 90-degree turn, comes around and enters right there. And then that bottom hose is what they call the drain, and that comes in under the turbo in the little Y connection and drains back into that same kind of sump. Now at the top, we've got a coolant line, but these two lines here come forward and they go back into the intake, into the turbo inlet. And this is where it differs from stock, because I've had to make some T's and stuff because Cobb decided to eliminate one of the ports. But either way, these both come into the inlet. One of them comes in here. It flows through a one of these little connectors, leak detector thing. And then the other one comes in here, down through that elbow back into the intake. So they both go into the intake after the MAF. Now this third line coming out of the top is what IAG calls their PCV line. You can see it goes down behind the intercooler and it ends up plugging in. Don't think you can see it, but it goes under the throttle body there. Bypassing the throttle body, it goes directly into the intake manifold. Now this line has a check valve in it that allows air to flow this way, so from the can to the intake, and that's to allow it to suck air while under a vacuum. But then when you get into boost and put positive pressure into the manifold, the check valve is supposed to close and prevent air from flowing this way back into the can. You have to excuse that burn on my finger. And that, because that would be a boost leak. It would the air would get past, it would pressurize the can and send boost places it shouldn't go potentially. So that's how IAG intended it to be designed. Now my question is, since all this is plumbed together into the intake, both valve covers in the crankcase go through this can and then they vent back into the intake, is there any harm in just deleting this line altogether? Because everything's still ventilating and balancing, and that PCV line, I feel like, is just added complexity that's not necessary. Now I understand it could change the tune, but that can be adjusted. That's not a big deal. I don't care about that. Because right now, the issue is yesterday when I did a boost leak test, I capped off all the necessary things and I pressurized my entire intake, which I understand this doesn't see boost. I get that. But I had, a whole intake manifold was pressurized, and what I noticed was, despite there being a check valve in here, boost was coming from the intake this direction into the can. It was leaking there, which it shouldn't be doing, which just got me thinking, why not just delete the whole damn thing altogether? So anyway, that's all. I tried to be as clear and concise as possible. I do understand how it works. The factory Subaru PCV is not part of the equation because it's been deleted as part of this air oil separator. Let me know what you think. I'm thinking about trying it out. I just want to make extra sure that I'm not sending pressure where it should or shouldn't go, or not letting something vent properly.